The forest breathed around Marcus like a living thing, its ancient pines swaying in rhythm with whispers he couldn't quite hear. The mountain loomed ahead, a black mass against the bruised sky, its peak lost in clouds that seemed to press down with malevolent intent. Each step on the needle-strewn path felt heavier than the last, weighted not just by his pack but by the crushing burden of what he'd done. 3 months since the accident. 3 months since Emma's small body had crumpled beneath his truck while he'd been checking his phone. 3 months of sleepless nights, of her mother's screams echoing in his dreams, of the bottle becoming his only companion. The court had called it vehicular manslaughter. His conscience called it murder. The rumors had reached him in the depths of his despair, whispered tales in dive bars about something deep in the Blackwood Mountains that could undo the past. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, crossing themselves when they thought no one was looking. A thing that lived in the shadow of the mountain, older than the trees, that could grant any wish for the right price. Marcus had nothing left to lose. Or so he'd thought. The campground materialized through the mist like a fever dream, a cluster of ramshackle cabins surrounding a central fire pit where orange flames danced despite the damp air. 3 figures huddled around the fire, their faces gaunt in the flickering light. "You're the one, aren't you?" The speaker was a woman, maybe 50, with hollow eyes and hands that trembled as she lifted a flask to her lips. "The one who's been asking questions down in Cedar Falls." Marcus dropped his pack beside an empty log. "Depends on what you think you know." "I know desperation when I see it." She took another swig. "I'm Sarah. This is Pete." She gestured to a skeletal man whose clothes hung loose on his frame. "And that's Dolores." The third figure, an elderly woman with silver hair, simply nodded without looking up from the flames. "You're here about the listener," Pete said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Same as us." "The listener?" "That's what we call it," Sarah said. "Been here longer than memory. Feeds on want, on need. On the things we do anything to change." Marcus settled onto the log, studying their faces. Each bore the same haunted expression he'd seen in his own mirror. "What did you wish for?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "My daughter. 16 years old, beautiful, smart. Had her whole life ahead of her until I let her go to that party. Until I was too drunk to pick her up when she called." Her voice cracked. "Car accident. Just like that, she was gone." Pete wrapped his arms around himself. "My son. 8 years old. I was supposed to be watching him at the lake. But I was on my phone, working, always working. He went under, and I didn't even notice until..." He couldn't finish. Dolores finally looked up, her eyes reflecting the firelight like a cat's. "My grandson. 23. Beautiful boy, but troubled. I knew he was using, knew he was in pain, but I thought tough love would fix him. Locked him out one winter night. Told him not to come back until he was clean." She smiled, but it was the smile of the broken. "He froze to death in an alley 3 blocks from my house." The fire crackled, sending sparks into the oppressive darkness. Marcus felt the weight of kinship with these strangers, bound together by the threads of guilt and loss. "How long have you been here?" he asked. 2 weeks, Sarah said. "Maybe 3. Time moves strange here." "The listener doesn't just grant wishes," Pete added. "It tests you first. Shows you things. Makes you choose." "Choose what?" Dolores leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Who deserves to live? Who deserves to suffer? It feeds on moral decay, you see. Each choice you make, each line you cross, it grows stronger." As if summoned by her words, the forest around them began to change. The trees seemed to lean inward, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the stars. The fire dimmed, its light struggling against an encroaching darkness that felt alive. "It's coming," Sarah breathed. A sound emerged from the depths of the woods, not quite footsteps, not quite breathing, but something that made the hair on Marcus's neck stand on end. The darkness between the trees began to coalesce, forming a shape that hurt to look at directly. The listener stepped into the firelight, and Marcus understood why the others couldn't meet its gaze. It was human-shaped but wrong in every detail, too tall, too thin, with fingers that ended in points and a face that seemed to shift depending on the angle of observation. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Marcus Chen," it said, and his name sounded like a prayer and a curse. You've traveled far to reach me. I want my daughter back, Sarah suddenly cried out, rising from her log. I've been here for weeks. I've done everything you asked. The listener turned its attention to her with the slow deliberation of a predator. Ah, Sarah. You've been most entertaining. But you failed your final test? What test? You never. The homeless man. 3 nights ago. You found him freezing by the road, begging for help. I whispered to you that saving him would mean your daughter could never return. And you walked away. Sarah's face crumpled. You said I had to choose. I said many things. But in the end, you chose to let an innocent man die for the chance at resurrection. Your daughter would not wish to return to a mother who would sacrifice strangers for her own grief. The darkness around the listener seemed to pulse, and Sarah began to scream. Her body convulsed, then simply faded. In moments, she was gone, leaving only the echo of her anguish. Pete was hyperventilating. My test? What was my test? The family by the lake, the listener said. The ones camping with their young son. You could have warned them about the weak ice. But I told you that their son's death would bring yours back. And you said nothing. Pete's sobs echoed through the clearing as he too began to fade, his pleas for mercy swallowed by the hungry darkness. Dolores remained still, her eyes fixed on the fire. I know what I did, she said quietly. The girl. The one who overdosed last week. I could have given her my naloxone, could have saved her. But you whispered that her death would balance the scales for my grandson. Indeed, the listener said. And now you understand the price of redemption built on others' suffering. As Dolores vanished into the night, Marcus found himself alone with the creature that had consumed his companions. The fire had dimmed to barely glowing embers, and the darkness pressed in from all sides. Your test was different, the listener said, circling him with predatory grace. More complex. More personal. The air shimmered, and suddenly Marcus was standing on a familiar street corner. Emma's mother, Janet, was crossing the intersection, her eyes red from crying, her movements distracted by grief. A car was approaching too fast, its driver texting, oblivious to the danger. You can save her, the listener whispered. Shout a warning. Push her to safety. But if you do, Emma can never return. Her mother's death is the only currency that can purchase your daughter's life. Marcus's throat constricted. Janet had lost her only child because of his negligence. She'd stood in the courtroom, her voice breaking as she spoke of her daughter's dreams, her kindness, her future that would never be. She'd looked at him with such hate, such pure anguish, that he'd felt his soul wither. The car grew closer. Janet remained oblivious, lost in her grief. Choose, the listener hissed. Her life or your daughter's. Redemption or revenge. Justice or resurrection. Marcus opened his mouth to shout a warning, but the words that emerged were different. Emma. Come back to me. The car struck Janet with a sickening thud. Her body crumpled, and for a moment, Marcus saw Emma's face superimposed over hers, the same shocked expression, the same terrible finality. Then the vision shattered, and he was back in the clearing, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Fascinating, the listener mused. You sacrificed the mother of your victim for the chance to reclaim her daughter. The poetry of it is exquisite. Where is she? Marcus demanded. Where's Emma? Oh, she's here, the listener said, and the darkness parted to reveal a small figure standing at the edge of the clearing. But when Marcus looked closer, his blood turned to ice. The thing that wore Emma's face was wrong. Its eyes were too bright, too knowing, filled with an ancient malevolence that no 6-year-old should possess. When it smiled, its teeth were too sharp, too many. Hello, Daddy, it said in Emma's voice, but underneath the familiar tone was something else, something hungry and vast and terrible. That's not. Marcus stepped backward, his mind reeling. That's not her. Oh, but it is, the listener said. This is what resurrection looks like when it's built on murder and sacrifice. You wanted your daughter back, Marcus. You wanted to undo your mistake. But you cannot create life without taking it, cannot build redemption on the graves of innocence. The Emma thing tilted its head, studying him with those awful eyes. You killed me once, Daddy. Then you killed Janet. How many more will you kill for me? I didn't know. I didn't understand. Understanding is irrelevant, the listener said. You made your choice. You valued your own peace over the lives of strangers. You are no different from those who came before you, all of you willing to sacrifice others for your own desires. The creature that had been Emma began to walk toward him, and with each step, Marcus felt his sanity slipping away. This was his daughter, but it was also something else, something born from his guilt and watered with innocent blood. I want to go home, Daddy, the thing said. I want to go back to our life. But first, there are others. Others who need to pay for what happened to me. Janet was just the beginning. Marcus realized with growing horror that the listener hadn't granted his wish out of mercy or justice. It had given him exactly what he'd asked for, a resurrection powered by his willingness to sacrifice others. He'd proven himself capable of murder for the sake of his own peace, and now that capacity would be his eternal burden. No, he whispered. I won't do it. I won't hurt anyone else. The Emma thing's smile widened impossibly. But you already have, Daddy. And you will again. Because deep down, you know you deserve your daughter back. You know your guilt is too heavy to bear. And when the weight becomes too much, you'll find someone else to sacrifice. Someone else to blame. The listener began to fade back into the darkness, its work complete. The campground will remain, it said. Others will come, drawn by rumors and desperation. And you will be here, father and daughter, testing them as you were tested. Each choice they make will feed the darkness, and each failure will add to our number. As the creature vanished, Marcus understood the true horror of his situation. He wasn't just trapped here with the thing that wore his daughter's face, he was part of the test now, part of the machine that fed on moral decay. Future visitors would see him as another desperate soul, another victim of the listener's cruel bargains. And he would whisper to them as the listener had whispered to him, offering them the same terrible choices. The fire died to cold ash, and the Emma thing took his hand with fingers that felt like ice. Come on, Daddy, it said. Let's wait for the next ones. I'm so hungry. As they walked toward the darkness between the trees, Marcus caught a glimpse of Sarah, Pete, and Dolores standing in the shadows, not gone, but transformed, their faces hollow with the weight of their choices. They were all part of it now, all servants of the thing that fed on human weakness. The last thing Marcus saw before the darkness claimed him was his own reflection in the Emma thing's eyes. Are no longer human, no longer capable of the redemption he'd sought. He'd gotten his wish, but like all who came before him, he discovered that some prices are too terrible to pay, even when you're willing to pay them. The forest breathed around them, ancient and patient, waiting for the next desperate soul to stumble into its embrace. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of footsteps on the needle-strewn path suggested that the wait wouldn't be long. In the end, Marcus realized, there was no redemption to be found here, only the endless perpetuation of moral decay, feeding on itself like a serpent devouring its own tail. He'd thought he was seeking absolution, but he'd only found a deeper damnation, one that would consume not just himself but everyone who came after. The weight of wishes, he understood now, was measured not in what they cost, but in what they made you willing to become.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like and subscribe button, and then share it with your friends. Your support helps us grow and create even more awesome content. We appreciate you being part of the journey.